What is up, guys? It's Mason once again, and today we continue our coverage of the 2024 Olympiad Round 7. We'll start off with the ladies section where they played against Antilles, Netherlands. I don't know if there are any different Netherlands, but the ladies played against the Netherlands, and this is the game between Gertrude and Jubitana, I think is how, or Ginger, just call it Ginger. So we have d4, d5, knight f3, knight f6, bishop f4, bishop f4, 5. What is better than one London? Two Londons. e6, e6, c3, c5, c3, and then we have here c5. This is basically how you want to play against the London system. Let me just mention this. Yes, normally if your opponent immediately goes like this, c5 is the best option, which is why some people go for the more flexible knight to f3, so that this move may not really be the right option for you to go for. So it made it difficult for Gertrude to know exactly when to play c5. But now we get c5, queen b6 straight, and we get this sort of position where, I mean, it's okay. Both players have things they can aim for. They both have similar plans, but here it looks like black may be a little bit favored in the position, especially because of the queen side. We have knight e5, which is just simply putting pressure on this side of the board. We have rook d8, knight to d2, castles king side, and then knight d to f3. We have takes, knight to b8, rook a to c1, knight to e4. And here you can see that, Gertrude has very good ideas, especially on the queen side. You could weaken here, for example, if you could ever get your rook here, force the pawn push, or like force the weakening of these pawn structures, this guy becomes a backward pawn. So despite the fact that, yes, this is bad, right, the double pawns is bad, I would always favor black a little bit here. Of course, the most likely result is a draw, but I mean, there are things to play for. Knight to d2, knight d6, bishop to e2, knight d7, takes, c4, d takes c4, knight takes c4, knight takes c4, rook takes c4, and the game is just dwindling down into a nothing game, basically. We might get a draw, but again, even though I still favor black, these pawns, if not watched properly, could actually lead to a loss for black, and also, like in the previous games, back rank problems. So you have to be very careful here. So we get b5 and rook to c7. Rook takes c7, bishop takes c7, and suddenly you realize that, wait, this recent set of trades puts black in a very good position, right? Because even if you were to return or retreat with your bishop, you have to think about this, right? Because the rook is coming into the second rank and is going to really deal with your pawns. Again, not so big of a deal, because after all, you're able to get this pawn and it's going to be like 1 versus 1 in a sense. But after rook to c8, white goes bishop to a5, which basically allows black to get a very good position. So Gertrude does the right thing here. You don't have to rush rook to c2. b4, the bishop is trapped. After your opponent's rook comes in, then now you go to c7, c2, and here white just makes this move, which makes no sense. I think she was thinking that after takes I take, and after takes I take, we are completely fine, forgetting that she has back rank problems herself. So after bishop takes rook, after bishop takes, if you play rook takes, this is a loss. You basically lose the game there. So after bishop takes, your opponent realizes, oh, I have back rank problems, plays h3. You just save your bishop, and in this position, Ginger resigned the game and Gertrude won. Very good, very nice game. Let's go on to the second game, which is the game between Toby and Pourier Diantheli. I struggle with pronouncing some of these names. Toby also plays as black. Wow, I'm keeping record time. So we have d4, d5, knight f3, knight f6, c3, c6, bishop f4, bishop f5, another double London system. I mean, these girls are just making me happy. E6, E6, Queen B3, and we have Queen B6. Knight BD7, knight BD2, knight BD7. Bishop to E2, bishop to E7, rook to C1, and Toby decides, okay, too much symmetry, I want to create an imbalance. She plays this move, and her point is she wants to trade the knight for the bishop, creating an imbalance of minor pieces on the board. And with this trade, now Toby has the bishop pair as opposed to her opponent who has the knight pair. H6, castles, knight E1, and then C5, standard idea. Pawn takes, knight takes, queen takes, pawn takes, and now we have a similar position to Gertrude. But you notice immediately that with this move, which aims to prevent this from happening, White actually creates a very big weakness, which Toby immediately takes advantage of. Knight to A4. You can't hold the 2 pawns, right? So here you could just bring the rook back, but her opponent possibly didn't want to repeat moves, like repeat a move she had already made. So knight A4. We have bishop, and Toby ignores it rightfully. Knight takes, bishop takes, pawn takes, and after knight to C2, you realize that these 2 pawns are going to be very vulnerable and easy to target. We have rook F to C8, rook to B1, knight A4, rook comes in to try and defend, knight takes, knight tries to get active, rook takes A3, knight jumps back, which again, you are initiating trades in a position where you shouldn't, but it's all good. Knight takes F5, and now we have rook to A5. And the reason why White here is winning is, I mean, first of all, she has 2 passed pawns. The only issue for the passed pawns is that they are doubled and isolated. But then again, yes, this is the main brunt of Black's advantage. So if White has a way of capturing these pawns, White is going to get a very good chance of drawing this game, which is what this game possibly was going to become. Rook D1, bishop to B4. We're going to get a lot of maneuvering. Here, the opponent is always trying to win this or win any of these, and Toby is trying her best to prevent them from winning those pawns. We have knight to F5, rook to A5, rook to D4, bishop to A3, and a lot of maneuvering. We just skip through the maneuvering. And then, after takes, rook comes in. Her opponent sacrificed the pawn for the activity. From this point on, Toby is actually better, and she finds the right way of doing it, okay? She first of all tries to get the trade of rooks. Once her opponent is declining, she goes F3, F6, kind of making it hard for the knight to involve itself. We have rook takes, which is what you also want to allow. You want your opponent, give your opponent the pawn so that you can become more active. Bishop comes in, knight jumps into H4, which is very strange. It's possible the plan was to come in here and target this, but then you are reducing the activity of your knight for a 1-move threat, which may not suffice because what do you call it? Okay, maybe. Yeah, because I think you have just rook to E7, and that's almost what Toby plans here. So he plays the move rook to E5 with a very interesting idea. Now, if you notice the king doesn't really have squares to move. So getting this with the bishop here actually creates a lot of like plans for Black. And her opponent in this position played G4. If, for example, the opponent decides, okay, let me go knight here. Knight to F3. Like I said, check here. The king can't run away. So the knight has to block once more. And then we get the move bishop to D6. And you might say, oh, I'm dropping the pawn. No, you're not dropping anything. You would always get this and you would be winning the position. So the opponent then plays G4. We have rook to E7, trying to either force the trade or get this rook defending. We have rook to B8, and then we have bishop to D6. Okay, so if you don't trade, that's what happens, right? You are trying to keep it so that the rook doesn't come in here to defend. The best option was just to take, but White just didn't want to do that, and then ended up losing. The rook. So now we have rook E2 check. King comes in. B5, knight to D4. Rook to B2. Knight to c6, rook to b1. And here I was like, oh, Toby's playing the bad manners type thing, right? Instead of saving the bishop, she's like, okay, I'm going to give you my bishop, and then I'm going to start pushing, and there's nothing you can do about it. For example, here, 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 and if you come in here, there's nothing you can do. Here, I just come in with check, and even if you come in here, I just promote. I mean, that was a straightforward winning plan. And so that's why I thought Toby played this. I mean, it's fine. But then after takes, Toby plays check, and I'm like, oh, she's still doing the bad manners thing, right? Because if I push and you jump in, so if I push and then you take, sorry, then I push again, there is no way you are catching this pawn, right? So I was like, oh, okay, Toby is just doing bad manners. Unfortunately, it seemed like she did not know the quickest way to win. It was very funny because we kept going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth before eventually she promotes, and then we get this trade. And then, I mean, this is a very simple winning position. You know the technique, and this is checkmate. I mean, this was the last game I was watching before my internet started disconnecting. So I was like, when this game ends, then I'll end of the stream. But I had to end of the stream because of the internet, and I was just wondering why Toby hadn't won the game 19 years ago, right? But that was a fun game. Now we go on to the open section, and we start off with Hasford's game. Why have I forgotten the group we played against as the men? Anyways, so Hasford is playing against Stuart. We have e4 d6, d4 g6, the modern defense, knight c3, bishop g7, bishop e2, knight f6, and then g4. And the moment I saw this move, I said that these kinds of early aggression moves don't usually work. One, because your opponent hasn't said he's going to castle kingside, right? He has not made any clear indication he's going to castle kingside. If you focus too much effort on the kingside and then he eventually castles queenside, you are going to be in a very bad position, because now you have to reallocate your resources or reorganize your resources, and that's going to lead you into problems. So yes, it's aggressive. Yes, there's potential of scary moves like this, and the question is, where's my knight going to go? But it's not really what you want to do. So we have knight to c6, unafraid, g5, knight to d7, d5, knight to d4, defended by the bishop, bishop to g4, and then we have e5. Best thing you can do if your opponent takes. If you want to be daring, you can take this way, or you can also just take with the knight, and you begin to see that, wait, does white actually have an attack? Like, the more you look at it, the more you're realizing, wait, I don't see the attack. h4, h5, sure, but you don't see it. Instead, we don't get the ampersand. We get knight f3, c5, takes, and black could be building a very strong center. This is resembling a piet or an antiphilidors. Bishop to e3, c5. I mean, it has pros and cons. You gain a very strong hold of the center. So, for example, if your opponent decides the position is close, so trading the bishop for the knights makes sense. But you want to kind of get this. It's a very solid structure in the center. You could do with it what you will. So it's a very good idea. And the con, I would say, is that you give your opponent this very strong d5 outpost, but it's not really that big of a deal. Knight d5, knight to b6, bishop takes c8, rook takes c8, and then we get these couple of trades. And what was all this, right? It's suddenly nothing. Yes, of course, I was talking about the fact that if you castle the opposite side, you'll be in trouble. But then there's nothing more in this position. There's absolutely nothing in this position, right? As in, for white, what did white succeed in doing by playing g4? Absolutely nothing. If anything at all, black is preferred here. Castles kingside, c3, knight to e6, and you can't. Like, what are you going to do here? What are you going to do here? You castle queenside, and then to start an attack, and it doesn't really work, right? Knight to d2, queen to c6, targeting this, getting away from any pressure here. Queen to g4, we have f5, captures and percent, rook takes, h4, h5, stopping any more pawn pushes. If you want to attack, you'd have to castle, put your rook here, and play f4, f5, if you can. Knight to f4, queen check, king hides itself, castles queenside, and then rook c to f8. Knight to f3, funny move here. Knight to e2 check. After queen takes, you just win the piece back. And then we get this interesting position here. We have bishop to h6. Bishop takes, king takes, queen to d2, rook blocks, rook takes, queen takes, and then the rook comes in here, putting pressure on this. Has4 takes the pawn, allowing this change of this transformation of the position to an end game where he has the 2 rooks versus his opponent's queen. More or less, this becomes a draw. Depending on how well you know how to play these end games, it could be a win for white, it could be a draw. It could also, in some cases, be a win for black. The secret is to keep these rooks coordinated. Once you break the coordination, your opponent has ways of maybe forking and then winning one of them. So you have queen to d6, king to f5, queen takes d5, rook takes a2, king attacks the rook. We have rook ff2, queen comes in with check, and that's basically what we're expecting. We're just expecting check, 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 and then the game ends. But after some more checks, it seems white made a mistake, because now black is winning, right? You can't take this pawn because this is literally mate. If you decide you are going to pin your opponent this way so that he can't play the mate, he gets h4, and all of a sudden a position that should have been drawn is now winning. You can't go back to watch the pawn because the same issue presents itself, right? So yeah, very funny game. But we are happy with another win from Hasford. Oh, and I forgot to mention, for the ladies section, it was 2.5 to a half. Hepzibah drew her game. She could have won it, but she messed up in the bishop opposite colored bishop endgame. She could have won that, even though, yes, that's traditionally normally like known to be drawn. So we had a 2.5 half on the women's side, and this is the men's section. And now we look at the other game, Clinton versus Jones Rupert. Clinton plays as black. I think we played too many blacks today. I'm just kidding. E4, C6, D4, and then we have D5, the Karukan. Here we have the advance, and then this variation, which Gotham Chess recommends a lot. Now, the reason for me knowing the reason why. Sorry, someone called me. Now the reason why the thing about this position is that it's similar to even the Scandinavian. I'm sorry about that. I got a coin that kind of confused me. The point is, in the Scandinavian, if your opponent does this, you get the exact same position. Just that I think black is a tempo up here. Similar ideas. So. And similar ideas. And the opponent here plays c4. C takes d4, knight comes in. Knight to c6, holding the pawn. Not really. The point is that the pawn takes, queen comes in check, and you capture the pawn. We have knight to c6, queen to d8, knight to b5, putting pressure on this pawn. You are not trying to hold on to the pawn. We have e6, queen to f4, bishop to c5. Your opponent is actually giving you the opportunity to hold the pawn, so he does the right thing of at least trying to hold the pawn since his opponent is giving him that opportunity. But here we have knight to d6 check, bishop takes, pawn takes, and queen to f6. Now, queen to f6 is completely fine, but I was wondering if he couldn't have like just played this. And the point being, you might say, oh wait, but he has enough. I don't know if this works, you know? So I was wondering why Clinton didn't go for this idea. Maybe there was something that scared him about it. But then we get and yeah. So I was wondering why he didn't go for that. Instead he goes for this. Maybe he just wants to relieve the pressure as soon as possible. Maybe wants to keep holding the pawn. I don't know. But now we have bishop to b5, bishop to d7, takes, and then queen takes d4. And here Clinton has another chance. Now there's a lot of pressure on him, but the pressure has been relieved. This pawn is still a problem. But here Clinton could actually play the move bishop takes f3. And after bishop takes f3, if your opponent captures back, obviously the queen is hanging. And if your opponent, for example, plays this, if your opponent, for example, plays this, d4, d7, king comes in here, and this move, targeting here, and at the same time, hoping to create any problems to me on the queen side. It seems like black is fine. You could even go for an easy and a quick and easy draw just here, like this, because your opponent might try to keep repeating the whole position over and over and over again. You could get this. You could go for this and even get an easy draw. But that's not what happens. After this, we get queen takes, knight takes, and then bishop comes in here. And this is the position that we get. And it's not looking good for Clinton, right? This rook is just a menace. It prevents any forward motion of the king. This knight at the moment cannot move. So it's like these two guys are locked in, and his opponent has 2 extra pieces to move it. So it's not looking so comfortable for Clinton. Yet the engine says it's fine. We have bishop to g5, and then Clinton plays bishop to e2, holding this, and at the same time prepping for a move of his opponent. Rook to d1, bishop to d5, and after d7, king f8, rook takes, promote, rook takes, bishop takes. The position is basically equal. This is going to be opposite color rook and pawn, opposite colored bishop, rook and pawn, king, rook and pawn endgame. Let me put it that way. So after rook to g1 check, king comes up. I was simply saying, okay, we play this and then it's a draw. Like, we play this and it's a draw, right? It's a draw. Simple game. But after rook to g1 check, Clinton goes for more, which is good. He goes rook to g2. So many pawns are hanging, right? So many of white pawns are hanging, and if he can maintain this type of thing, he may be able to create a certain aggressive or winning position for him, so that even though it's bishops of opposite color, he still has chances. So we have king comes in, rook takes, bishop develops to f6, a6, putting all his pawns on light squares, playing against the dark squared bishop. King to f7, bishop to d7, bishop to d8, rook to h3 check, and white plays rook to f4, literally allowing him to win another pawn. And now 2 passed pawns, even in a rook and pawn, even in this type of endgame, is winning for black. Actually, it's a similar position that Hepzibah had, but she maybe did not know the technique, and that's why that game ended in a draw. But at this level, you know your opponent is going to cook you. So in this position, white resigns and Clinton wins his game. Now, Smart, I think, also won his game. And Smart also won his game, and Bernard won his game. Now Bernard's game was absolutely draw. It was a rook and pawn end game, but he kept pushing and his opponent messed up, and eventually, the last time I checked the position, he actually won, or he was in a winning position. He hadn't won yet, but all he had to do was play, I think, a rook move, and then he would have won, or his opponent would have to sacrifice the rook or something. It was just a very crazy position. So yeah, good day for Ghana today. So many wins, and yeah, we hope this continues tomorrow. So guys, if you did enjoy this video, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow as we continue our coverage of this Olympiad. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.